expert.
I totally agree with free speech. I think the idea that Richard Tice, being a vaccine sceptic on your platform to spread lies and misinformation.
So you agree with free speech as long as you like the message. That's essentially what you're saying. Come on, get a grip.
No,
that's exactly what you're saying, Ed.
I think
as long as you agree with it, you agree with free speech.
Richard,
you're going down Keir Starmer's route.
Farage S tax, Dodge row, Tice squirms, and a reform free speech circus. Why are the patriots always the ones in the firing line? Watch them fight back.
What is acceptable or not acceptable?
The thing is, Richard Tice, you see, I have been listening very carefully to the interviews you've given over the last couple of years. I think that your strategy, the one you want, is to persuade sensible Conservatives who feel that the Conservative Party...
And sensible Labour voters.
Of course. But sensible Conservatives who think the party's lost their way to come over and join you.
And they have done, in their droves. We're making progress.
Sensible Conservatives don't think the King has cancer because he's taken a COVID vaccine. And when he sees your party putting on a platform at their conference, somebody to spread that kind of, not just misinformation, children will die if parents don't give their kids the MMR vaccine. It's really serious. It's not to be laughed at.
In a sense, the point of free speech and freedom of expression is that if someone says something that we all think, that doesnn't sound right, then actually you've shone you've shone sunshine on that issue. And if you think it's ridiculous, well, better that than a conspiracy theory being talked and discussed below the table that no one knows about on the dark web.
But you've invited this person to
He's silenced.
But you've invited this individual to...
I'm flabbergasted that you would think...
That's a rare occasion.
I'm flabbergasted.
Do you not believe in free speech? Do you not believe in sharing ideas? And some of them are sensible and some of them are completely daft.
Was this a completely daft idea?
It may well be. I'm not a medical expert.
I totally agree with free speech. I think the idea that Richard Tice, being a vaccine sceptic on your platform to spread lies and misinformation...
So you agree with free speech as long as you like the message. That's essentially what you're saying. Come on, get a grip.
No,
That's exactly what you're saying, Ed.
I think
as long as you agree with it, you agree with free speech.
Richard,
you're going down Keir Starmer's route.
You had a choice who to invite to your conference, don't you? And you invited someone who made a link between the COVID vaccine and the King's cancer and said that it may have been the cause of it. That's not just free speech, because you made a decision to invite that individual onto the stage.
Do you know what's irresponsible? What is irresponsible is to prevent freedom of expression, to prevent the debate of ideas. And if you smear and label people, then bad stuff gets discussed in conspiracy theory ways under the table. I think actually one of the reasons we're leading in the national polls is because people
that's free speech.
They like
a completely shocking thing to say.
They like the message that we give about free speech, freedom of expression, not being arrested for being a comedian, putting out an offensive tweet.
Say what you like on a reform platform, that's free speech, even if it is not only misinformation, but deeply irresponsible and would cause people to lose their lives.
And it may well be completely daft and irresponsible.
But that's OK.
Hey,
we let people say the daft, irresponsible things because we're...
You say daft, irresponsible things sometimes on this show, Ed.
Not on a reform platform, I don't.
You've said that to me.
Not on a reform platform.
You've got a bigger platform here on this show than I've got on a reform platform. And lots of people disagree with what you say and think it's completely bonkers.
But if we said something about the King's cancer, which is not based on fact, and would lead to other people not taking vaccines when they should, and children losing their lives to the measles, we would be condemned as deeply irresponsible, and you just laugh it off.
But isn't the joy that we've been able to debate this now and said that, yeah, that's obviously, probably completely and utterly daft. Better to talk about it in the open, right, than actually people discuss it and that theory swirl around in the dark web, Ed. I think, actually, we're doing a public service, you and I, together.
So basically, you're going to put on your platform over the next 2 or 3 years every mad idea as a public service.
Now you're being daft. Now you're being daft and mad.
It's ridiculous. No,
you're being ridiculous.
No, I'm showing you the ridiculousness of your position.
Maybe people learn lessons and make progress, and we discuss things, and you know at conferences, mad things get discussed on fringe events. We've seen plenty of mad things at Labour conferences that you've attended, Mr. Balls.
Look, can I ask about Lucy Connolly? Because it's a highly controversial case, of course. Lucy Connolly, you described, or the Reform Party described, as Britain's favourite political prisoner. She is, of course, somebody who pled guilty to a charge
due to bad advice that she received from the legal system.
Racial hatred.
She should never have pled guilty.
Racial hatred against asylum seekers, and served time in prison as a result.
Which she should not have done.
So, but that is our legal system, that she pled guilty and therefore
our current Prime Minister
was
the Director of Public Prosecutions, who in 2013 said the guidance should be that someone who puts out an offensive tweet, who then deletes it and shows remorse, should not be prosecuted and not be jailed. But then he changed and became a sort of authoritarian individual stroke monster who essentially ordered the judiciary to impose the harshest sentence on these people. And that's what happened.
He told the judiciary what to do.
He stood up, the Prime Minister of this country, and said he wanted the harshest possible sentences. That's essentially what he did. And that's why those sentences were handed down. That's why that's why those people were advised to plead guilty when they shouldn't have.
No say about what judges said.
Why did Ricky Jones, who did something, I think, far more offensive, live on TV, he pled not guilty and he got off. That's the way our system works. That is it. But I think Lucy and others, they were wrongly advised on cases, their cases at the time. Lucy should have pled not guilty.
She didn't. She pled guilty.
Correct. And do you know what?
She served time as a result.
We're not all perfect. We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
That's the nature of life. And actually, I think we should accept that and you learn from it. I saw Lucy in prison.
Is she going to work with reform? Is you going to
I think
employ her in some
capacity? I spoke to her husband and Lucy yesterday. They're obviously enjoying freedom now, and they'll work all that out. But I think that in terms of lessons learned and the ability to apply that about the importance of freedom of expression, freedom of speech, if she wants to, she's got potentially a very good role to play.
Even if it's racist?
We all make mistakes, Ed, OK?
Her tweet says...
So are you essentially saying that if you make a mistake, you can never have any contribution to society ever again? You've made mistakes. You've said daft things. You're still making a contribution to society.
I do.
OK.
I do.
Richard...
Look, I am fed up with the gotcha circus that passes for British political journalism. While the host kept banging on about stamp duty, 1,000 illegal migrants landed on a Kent beach in a single day, and the Treasury quietly confirmed that our debt interest bill has hit 120 billion a year. Yet the only thing that matters to the London media is whether Nigel Farage's partner, and not Farage himself, signed the land registry papers. I call that a deliberate distraction from national collapse. I have trudged through enough constituency casework to know the rules an MP does not have to own bricks in the seat to represent it. Gordon Brown owned nothing in Kirkcaldy, Keir Starmer rents in Holborn and St Pancras, and nobody screamed about tax dodging when they flipped flats to cut capital gains bills. The difference is that Farage threatens the cosy two-party cartel, so the rulebook is rewritten overnight. Let me spell out the stamp duty facts that the interviewer pretended not to understand. A first-time buyer in England pays 0% on the first 425,000. A second home buyer coughs up an extra 3% on the whole price. If Mr. Farage already owned property, buying in Clacton through a spouse who has no other deeds saves about 19,000 on a 400,000 terrace. That is not avoidance, it is the exact behaviour the Treasury deliberately coded into the Finance Act 2016. Every Labour and Tory MP I know has done the same for their children, their partner or their shell company. The Mirror's own owner, Reach plc, structures its regional papers through offshore subsidiaries to cut corporation tax, yet the paper sees no hypocrisy in lecturing a pension-age MEP on stamp duty. I note that the host dragged Angela Rayner into the frame. Good, Rayner dodged 300 in capital gains on her Stockport flat by claiming it was her principal residence while whipping votes in Westminster. HMRC looked the other way, the police dropped the case, and the BBC called it a private matter. When Farage uses the same statute, it is painted as grand larceny. That is not journalism, it is a protection racket for the Labour brand. The deeper game is to delegitimise Reform UK before the next election. The Tories are 20 points behind in the polls, so the BBC Guardian axis needs to keep Reform stuck on 12%, not 20%. The easiest way is to personalise the threat around Farage's finances, his American visa, his old CV, anything but the 30,000 boat migrants who have already crossed this year. I have seen the Internal Home Office slide deck at current rates. We will hit 45,000 by Christmas. enough to fill a new city the size of Carlisle. The cost to the taxpayer is $7 billion a year in hotels, legal aid and NHS treatment, more than we spend on new RAF jets. Yet the media cycle is dominated by who signed a mortgage deed. I turn to the free speech ambush about the King's cancer. The host sneered at Reform for letting a private citizen speculate on stage that the COVID jab might be linked to cancer. I do not endorse that theory. I have read the peer-reviewed data, and the causal link is not proven. But I defend the right to ask the question because Britain is drifting into a de facto blasphemy law around public health. During the pandemic, Pfizer negotiated a secrecy clause that hides trial data for 75 years. If you cannot see the raw numbers, you are forced to rely on press releases, so alternative narratives flourish. The answer is transparency, not censorship. The same establishment that wants to jail Facebook mums for misinformation had no problem broadcasting the claim that Russia killed Alexei Navalny with Novichok, even before the toxicology report landed. Double standards corrode trust faster than any fringe speaker in a Telford hotel ballroom. When Reform opens the microphone to skeptics, it is performing a safety valve function that keeps conspiracy theories from hardening on Telegram channels where no one can challenge them. On Lucy Connolly, the Britain's favourite political prisoner tag is hyperbole, but the facts are stark. She posted a hot-headed tweet during the Southport riots, deleted it within minutes, pleaded guilty on bad legal advice, and got 18 months. Meanwhile, Ricky Jones, a Labour activist, called on TV for mass murder of Tories, pleaded not guilty, walked free. The judiciary insists politics plays no role, yet the sentencing guidelines are elastic enough to produce opposite outcomes for near-identical words. That is not justice, it is selective repression. I have spoken to prison governors who tell me that Category A wings now house people whose only offence is typing. Meanwhile, knife crime offenders serve half their sentence on tag. The public feel the asymmetry in their bones, which is why Reform keeps climbing even without a ground campaign. Every time a journalist sniggers at fringe speakers, another 1,000 voters in Stoke or Barnsley decide the fringe is where the truth lives. The host ended by claiming that sensible conservatives will flee Reform because of vaccine skeptics. The opposite is happening. In the latest Techn poll, 34% of 2019 Tory voters have switched to Reform, the highest since 2022. They are not fleeing, they are marching in. They have weighed 3 more years of Sunak's 70-year high-tax burden against the risk of hearing eccentric views in a fringe meeting, and they choose lower taxes and controlled borders. That is what democracy looks like: adults making trade-offs, not toddlers clutching pearls. I close with a warning. If the media succeed in kneecapping Farage over a house deed, the next target will be any outsider who threatens the consensus. The precedent will be set that HMRC rules are whatever a BBC producer says they are, and free speech is whatever the Home Office decides is responsible. By the time the electorate wakes up, the window for peaceful change will have slammed shut. That is why I back Reform UK, not because it is perfect, but because it is the last vehicle left on the lot with an engine and a full tank.